people thought he could potentially become the world's first trillionaire. Instead, he stole billions of dollars from customers of his ridiculously profitable crypto exchange in order to prop up his struggling trading firm. He also spent his customers' money on investments, luxurious real estate, and political donations. And when everything fell apart, he placed the blame squarely on his ex-girlfriend. The monumental downfall of one-time crypto wunderkind Sam Bankman-Fried was rooted in greed, a misplaced overconfidence in his own genius, and an ill-fated decision to mix business and romance. Now he has been sentenced to spend more than 2 decades behind bars. Sam Bankman-Fried, also known as SBF, was born in 1992. The elder of 2 boys, his parents, Joseph Bankman and Barbara Fried, were both law professors at Stanford University. Bankman-Fried's parents were deeply committed to liberal causes. His mother co-founded a political action committee, Mind the Gap, which supported liberal candidates and funded get-out-the-vote campaigns. When Sam was in his 20s, he discovered that his parents had never married, in support of their gay friends who couldn't marry at the time. Bankman-Fried excelled at mathematics as a child. He spent high school summers at the Canada-USA Math Camp for mathematically gifted youth, and went on to attend MIT, majoring in physics and minoring in math. In college, SBF encountered the philosophy of effective altruism, which advocated the use of data-driven methods to assess one's impact on the world. Essentially, effective altruism preached that rather than becoming a doctor in a poor country, you could help more people by becoming rich and funding 100 doctors in poor countries. It encouraged talented young people to become as wealthy as possible in order to maximize their positive impact by donating to worthy causes. It would become a guiding philosophy in Bankman-Fried's life. Upon graduation, Bankman-Fried began working for a quantitative trading firm called Jane Street Capital, where he was often singled out as the best trader in his class. He was paid a salary of $300,000 in his first year, $600,000 in his second year, and he received a $1 million bonus in year 3. His bosses told him one day his annual salary would likely reach somewhere between $15 million and $75 million. And yet Bankman-Fried was unhappy with his job. Around 2017, he began noticing cryptocurrency. The value of crypto was surging, yet mainstream trading firms like Jane Street did not trade it and wanted nothing to do with it. Crypto trading was still primitive, and Bankman-Fried saw a hole that could be filled by a professional quantitative trading firm. So he left Jane Street to found his first company, Alameda Research. The firm mostly performed arbitrage, buying crypto in markets where prices were low and selling in Asian markets where prices were high. SBF hired many former friends and colleagues to work at his new firm. Key figures included Gary Wang, a programmer friend he had met at high school math camp who went on to become his college roommate at MIT, Sam Trabucco, another high school math camp friend, Nishad Singh, Sam's younger brother's childhood best friend, and Caroline Ellison, a former Jane Street colleague and Sam's on-again, off-again girlfriend. Bankman-Fried and Ellison's romantic relationship would play a pivotal role in the scandal that unfolded. Before Bankman-Fried began dating Ellison, he asked one of his close friends, Adam Yedidia, if it was a good idea. Yedidia, who had known Sam since MIT and had gone on to work with him at Jane Street and Alameda, advised against dating her. Bankman-Fried himself sent Ellison a list of pros and cons about entering a relationship. On his cons list, he wrote, among other things, "I'm worried about the power dynamics between us. There are a lot of really effed up things about dating an employee, and this could destroy Alameda if it goes really poorly PR-wise." On the pros list, among other things, he wrote twice that he really liked sleeping with her. Despite the list of cons being longer than the list of pros, and despite his friend's advice, he began dating Caroline in secret. In the meantime, SBF soon noticed yet another hole in the crypto markets, the absence of a truly effective crypto exchange. Unlike regular exchanges where traders traded on exchanges while storing their money in regular bank accounts, crypto exchanges were platforms on which traders both stored and traded their cryptocurrencies. Most crypto exchanges at the time did not have features to attract large institutional and corporate clients. He also saw ways in which crypto exchanges could be designed more profitably. In many exchanges, traders were required to put up a small amount of collateral in case their trades lost money. If their trade was losing by the end of the day, the exchange requested more collateral. However, if a trade went into the red very quickly, it would exceed the amount of available collateral, and the losses would be absorbed by the exchange. Bankman-Fried and his friend Gary Wang designed an exchange in which trader positions were analyzed by the second, not by the day, meaning that a trade was canceled immediately if it went too far into the red, leaving the exchange with no losses to absorb. SBF and Gary Wang had actually tried building an exchange in the past. It had been called Krypton BTC, and it had struggled to attract users. So this time, they wanted to sell their new software to an established exchange that already had customers. They pitched their idea to Changpeng Zhao, also known as CZ, a Chinese Canadian who was the CEO of one of the largest crypto exchanges in the world, Binance. CZ said he'd think about it, but a few weeks later, he informed them that he wouldn't be buying their software. Instead, he instructed his engineers to build their own version of the software. It was the first of many moves CZ would make over the course of their relationship that would strike Bankman-Fried as douchey. So SBF decided to launch the exchange himself. In 2019, 2 years after founding Alameda, he founded FTX. Despite initially starting off on the wrong foot, Binance CEO Changpeng Zhao would go on to invest in FTX early, acquiring a 20% stake in the company. To ensure that his new exchange was successful, Bankman-Fried needed to attract as many customers as possible. He focused on two main strategies: endorsement deals and courting regulators. SBF understood the power of effective marketing. He wrote down 3 advertising campaigns whose level of impact he wanted to achieve: Barack Obama's Yes We Can, Apple's Think Different, and Nike's Just Do It. He believed professional athletes would be the most effective way to attract the predominantly young and male crypto customer base. SBF figured that if he could get FTX's name on a sports stadium, it would help the company gain mainstream acceptance. He tried and failed to get the naming rights to the stadiums of the Kansas City Chiefs and the New Orleans Saints. Then the Miami Heat contacted them, and FTX signed a deal for $135 million to have the naming rights to the Miami Heat Stadium for 19 years. Once FTX's name was on a major sports building, celebrity endorsements came easily. They secured megawatt celebrities like Tom Brady and his wife Gisele Bündchen, as well as Steph Curry, Shaquille O'Neal, and Naomi Osaka. They ran a Super Bowl ad featuring comedian Larry David. These celebrity endorsements went a long way towards building public trust in the company. FTX quickly grew to become the world's second-largest crypto exchange, behind only Binance. The next group FTX sought to win over were regulators. They wanted to be seen as different from most of the other crypto exchanges, who tended to openly flout regulations. Binance, for example, openly offered banned or unapproved financial products to U.S. customers. Binance ignored recommended Know Your Customer regulations, which required customers to provide legitimate identification, allowing customers to transact anonymously and untraceably, making Binance the crypto exchange of choice for terrorists, criminals, and money launderers. Binance executives joked that their exchange was the perfect place for drug dealers to launder their money, and they allowed known criminals and known affiliates of terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda, Hamas, and ISIS to transact on their platform. They also allowed U.S. customers to transact with people in sanctioned countries like Iran, Cuba, and Syria. The company was facing its own SEC lawsuit, accusing it of orchestrating an elaborate scheme to evade U.S. federal securities laws. Meanwhile, CEO Changpeng Zhao sat out of U.S. authorities' reach in Binance's headquarters in Dubai, which did not have an extradition treaty with the United States. Sam Bankman-Fried believed that one way to gain customers was to become the most straight-arrow, regulator-friendly teacher's pet of crypto exchanges. He took care not to offer U.S. customers any illegal or unapproved financial products. He testified in Washington about crypto regulation encouraging the U.S. government to regulate the crypto market even more and encouraging them to crack down on lawbreakers. According to his ex-girlfriend, one of Bankman-Fried's primary obsessions was getting regulators to crack down on Binance, which he believed would help him grab some of Binance's 50% market share. When Dubai officials encouraged FTX to open headquarters in Dubai, Bankman-Fried informed them that he wouldn't move there if Binance was there, a subtle attempt to evict Binance from its home base. For a while, Bankman-Fried became the golden boy of crypto. He was an early mover, establishing himself as one of the dominant players in an emerging market. The company was making money hand over fist. Revenue grew exponentially, from $20 million in 2019 to $100 million in 2020 to $1 billion in 2021. By 2022, FTX had over 9 million customers and collected a fee every time any one of them made a trade. It didn't matter whether customers made winning trades or losing trades. FTX always got paid. This made the company attractive to mainstream investors. FTX was able to secure investments from reputable firms like Sequoia Capital, Lightspeed, and SoftBank. Eventually, FTX would hit a peak valuation of $32 billion. The company was so obscenely profitable that one venture capitalist at Sequoia Capital speculated that Bankman-Fried could become the world's first trillionaire. In the meantime, SBF would obtain the distinction of being the richest person in the world under the age of 30, with Forbes magazine estimating his net worth at $22.5 billion at the age of 29. No one else had gotten richer faster, except for Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg. Despite his net worth, Bankman-Fried carefully curated an image of an effective altruist who cared nothing for wealth. He dressed in cargo shorts and wrinkled t-shirts and drove a Toyota Corolla. He claimed that he planned to give away most of his money and live on $100,000 a year. In the spring of 2022, things began to crack. One of the corporate customers that traded crypto on FTX was Bankman-Fried's other company, Alameda. This had always concerned investors, but Bankman-Fried assured them that the two companies were separate entities. In 2021, he stepped down as CEO of Alameda to focus solely on FTX. He named his friend Sam Trabucco and his on-again, off-again girlfriend Caroline Ellison as co-CEOs of Alameda in his place. Trabucco was a skilled trader whose talents were rumored to rival Bankman-Fried's. He was supposed to manage the trading risks while Ellison managed the people. But soon after being made co-CEO of Alameda, Trabucco lost interest in his job and became preoccupied with enjoying his wealth. He resigned in April of 2022, leaving Ellison in charge of both the trading and the personnel. Bankman-Fried told investors that Alameda had no special advantages on the FTX platform. But this was not true. From the very beginning, Bankman-Fried had had his close friends Gary Wang and Nishad Singh write code into FTX's program that allowed Alameda to freely borrow from FTX customer funds. Alameda was allowed to hold a negative balance, that is, to take out more money than they actually had in their FTX account. They were granted a credit line of $65 billion, while most other companies only had single to double-digit millions. Alameda was also exempt from risk mitigation methods, such as FTX's automatic account liquidation protocol for customers that were losing too much money. SBF freely funneled money from FTX customer funds to Alameda, spending some of the money on loans to employees, real estate, political donations, and luxury travel. He famously lived in a $30 million penthouse with 9 other people, including his girlfriend Caroline Ellison and his friends Gary Wang, Nishad Singh, and their romantic partners. He gave his parents $10 million as a gift and bought them a $16 million Bahamas vacation home. SBF also became very active in politics. He spent over $30 million supporting Democratic candidates in the 2022 election cycle and donated at least $1 million to his mother's political action committee, Mind the Gap. Bankman-Fried believed Donald Trump was an existential threat to humanity and claimed that his people had contacted members of Donald Trump's team to ask how much it would take to convince Trump not to run for president again. Trump's team allegedly provided a figure of $5 billion, which was too much even for Bankman-Fried. Spokespersons for Trump would later deny this story. Bankman-Fried also tried another strategy to move against Trump. He began pouring millions of dollars to support anti-Trump Republican candidates. He met with Republican Minority Leader Mitch McConnell and planned to give him $15 to $30 million to support anti-Trump Republican candidates in Senate races. He plotted to quietly donate money to funds run by friends of McConnell to be quietly distributed to Republican candidates so that the public wouldn't know that he was supporting both Democrats and Republicans. In a later interview, SBF said that he kept his donations to Republicans secret because he felt that the press had an extremely liberal bias. But Bankman-Fried's most expensive expenditures were over $4 billion worth of investments. He spent over $2 billion buying back shares of FTX from his arch-rival Changpeng Zhao. SBF felt that he could not successfully appeal to regulators if someone like CZ, who continuously flouted regulations, was one of his major investors. SBF had to use about $1 billion worth of FTX customer money as part of his $2 billion buyback of CZ's shares, but according to Caroline Ellison, he justified it as a really important thing to do. SBF also invested widely in startups, including a $500 million investment in an AI company called Anthropic, a startup that would also attract interest from the likes of Google and Amazon. FTX had assured its customers that their money would not be used for investments. But according to his ex-girlfriend, SBF believed in a utilitarian philosophy that things like don't lie or don't steal don't matter as long as whatever you are doing was for the greater good. In his mind, raiding these customer funds to make investments that would make him even richer and more powerful was justifiable because, as an effective altruist, he would use the money to do good. He boasted to his girlfriend that there was a 5% chance he could become president of the United States someday. In the summer of 2022, crypto markets took a tumble. Bitcoin lost more than half its values in just 3 months. Crypto firms toppled one by one, from Three Arrows Capital to Terra Luna to Voyager. FTX, as an exchange, was shielded from this mayhem, but Alameda, as a trading firm, was not. This is when Bankman-Fried's decision to mix romance and the workplace would come back to bite him hard. In the spring of 2022, just before the crypto downturn, Bankman-Fried and Alameda CEO Caroline Ellison broke up. She accused him of not paying enough attention to her and said that his decision to keep their relationship a secret made her feel like he was ashamed to date her. The two had kept their relationship completely secret from everyone when they first started dating, and later revealed it to only a handful of close friends. Bankman-Fried tried to reassure Ellison that he kept the relationship quiet because it would be bad PR for people to know that he was sleeping with the CEO of his other company. But Ellison was not convinced. She kicked him out of their shared room in the $30 million penthouse and stopped speaking to him. He claimed she began ignoring his advice and avoiding his questions regarding Alameda's trading activities. She admitted that she stopped interacting with him one-on-one, but claimed that they both participated in work-related messaging groups. Whatever the state of their communication, they both agreed that Bankman-Fried had advised her to make certain hedges on Alameda's positions, hedges that would have protected Alameda from the crypto crash, and that Ellison had failed to do so. As a result, the value of Alameda's crypto assets plummeted. Alameda had borrowed a lot of money from crypto lending firms. As those firms struggled during the crypto crash, many asked for their money back, and Alameda didn't have it. Rather than let Alameda fail like so many other crypto companies, SBF made the fateful decision to pay back Alameda's loans using even more customer money, despite the fact that Ellison had just lost billions of customer money through bad trades. Ellison did a back-of-the-envelope calculation and estimated that there was only a 21% chance that a run on withdrawals would result on the missing customer funds being exposed. FTX was still wildly profitable, and SBF planned to hold more funding rounds. They hoped that after the markets settled down, they would be able to replace the customer money before anyone noticed it was missing. After Ellison's massive financial losses, SBF finally realized that the incestuous relationship between Alameda and FTX was a bad idea. He wrote a document to Gary Wang and Nishat Singh, leaving Caroline out of the loop. The document argued that Alameda needed to be shut down and cited Ellison's poor leadership and the bad PR surrounding the two companies' relationship. Caroline Ellison was not a natural leader and probably never would be, SBF wrote. However, Alameda was still in a lot of debt. They realized that they would need to wait to shut it down until its debts were cleared. In the meantime, SBF invested $400 million with another Bahamas trading firm, Modulo, a practically unknown firm owned by one of his former girlfriends, Lily Jing, who had once worked with both SBF and Caroline Ellison at Jane Street Capital. SBF argued that Modulo had stronger leadership and would be less of a PR hit. In her private writings, Caroline Ellison expressed feelings of jealousy and resentment towards Modulo and said she felt like she was being squeezed out. But SBF would never get the time to shut down Alameda or raise enough money to replace the missing FTX customer funds. Fate had other plans. On November 2, 2022, a news outlet called CoinDesk published a leaked Alameda balance sheet showing that a sizable portion of its assets were in FTX's native token, FTT, whose price rose and fell with demand, similar to a company's stock. This made it look like SBF was using one of his own companies to prop up FTT's price, and like he was counting his own stock as an asset on his balance sheets. It also revealed that Alameda was extremely vulnerable to any fluctuations in FTT's price. SBF's arch-rival, Changpeng Zhao, identified this vulnerability as an opportunity to screw SBF over. CZ had received over $500 million worth of FTT tokens as part of his $2 billion buyout package. He announced in a tweet that he was selling off his FTT tokens. The move was in retaliation for Bankman-Fried's lobbying to have regulators crack down on Binance. "We won't support people who lobby against other industry players behind their backs," wrote CZ. CZ's announcement that he was selling off his tokens led to a slew of sell-offs that flooded the market with FTT, crashing the price by over 75% in just 4 days. In the general panic, customers rushed to withdraw their funds from FTX. The run on withdrawals that Caroline Ellison had believed had a very small chance of happening was happening. This run on withdrawals technically shouldn't have been a problem if all the money was where it was supposed to be. But it wasn't, because billions of dollars had been used to prop up Alameda. Within days, FTX had to pause withdrawals, and panicked customers found that they couldn't get their money. As FTX executives realized that they didn't have the funds to fulfill customer withdrawal requests, SBF was forced to go hat in hand to his arch-nemesis, CZ, to ask him to purchase the company, which would provide liquidity for the withdrawals. The two signed a non-binding agreement, and for a while it looked as though FTX would be rescued. But the agreement meant that CZ would be allowed to look at FTX's books. CZ pulled out of the agreement in less than 48 hours, citing misuse of customer funds and pending government investigations. 2 days after the buyout talks with Binance collapsed, FTX and Alameda both filed for bankruptcy. It would eventually be revealed that almost $9 billion of customer funds were missing. On the very same day FTX filed for bankruptcy, over $400 million of what was left of FTX customer money went missing. It initially appeared to be an inside job. An employee had seemingly taken advantage of the chaos to make off with hundreds of millions of dollars. The high level of access required for the theft led many people to suspect that either Sam Bankman-Fried or Gary Wang was the responsible party. However, the real culprits would eventually be found over a year later. In February of 2024, the feds filed charges against a well-known phone hacking group out of Chicago, the Powell Group. The group had hired a woman named Emily Hernandez to impersonate a high-level female FTX employee. Hernandez walked into a Texas AT&T store with a fake ID containing her photo but the female employee's name, and convinced AT&T to switch the female employee's phone number to Hernandez's SIM card. This hack, known as SIM swapping, allowed the hackers to receive the employee's text verification messages, bypassing two-factor authentication protocols. It was assumed that they must have already acquired the employees' passwords some other way. The hackers used this method to access FTX customer funds using the female employee's credentials and to transfer over $400 million to a crypto wallet that was eventually laundered by Russian criminal gangs. The filing did not reveal which particular female employee was hacked. However, based on the individual's level of access, media outlets narrowed that it could only be one of three possibilities: the CFO, a woman named Jen Chan; the COO, a woman named Constance Wang; or Sam Bankman-Fried's ex-girlfriend, Caroline Ellison. While FTX executives were eventually exonerated of this particular crime, it still reflected very poorly on them. SIM swapping was a common scam in the world of crypto. There were well-known security measures against it that the high-ranking female employee in question had failed to implement, making it concerning that people with control over billions of dollars of customer money could be so careless with security. As things collapsed, SBF attempted to concoct a story to blame the lost funds on negligent accounting. He came up with a story that FTX funds had unknowingly been going into Alameda's bank accounts. When FTX was first founded, it didn't have its own bank account because banks were reluctant to give accounts to crypto companies. So initially, FTX customers had been wiring their deposits directly to Alameda. FTX and Alameda kept track of which money belonged to FTX customers in a document called the Fiat at account. Eventually, FTX was able to get its own bank account. However, some legacy customers kept wiring money to Alameda. SBF's explanation for how they lost so much of FTX customer money was to claim that Alameda had kept spending all the money in their account without realizing that some of it wasn't theirs. During his trial, SBF was actually rather convincing in his claims that he hadn't known that legacy customers were still sending money to Alameda. It was one of the few small victories that journalists conceded that he had actually made during his trial. He successfully showed messages proving that he had instructed Alameda employees to shut down the Fiat at account and assumed it would be done, but it never was. Bankman-Fried had concocted a plausible explanation for how the lost customer funds could be blamed on negligent record-keeping rather than ill intent. Meanwhile, SBF, Gary Wang, and Nishat Singh held a private meeting to discuss how they were going to claim each other was innocent if the feds got involved. But they were wasting their time. During the 48 hours in which FTX looked like it would be rescued by Binance, Caroline Ellison had held an all-hands meeting with her Alameda employees. SBF had sent Caroline a text message asking her simply to inform her employees that Alameda would likely be shutting down after Binance purchased the company, and that it would be appreciated if the employees stuck around to help wind things down. Instead, Ellison chose to use this meeting to come clean to her employees about the misuse of FTX customer funds, a puzzling decision given the deal with Binance to save the company, although the deal would fall apart later that day. To a room full of about 30 employees, Ellison completely spilled the beans while constantly laughing nervously. She revealed that Alameda had always been allowed to use FTX customer funds, that she, SBF, Gary Wang, and Nishat Singh had known about it, and that it was SBF who had decided to cover Alameda's debts using FTX customer deposits. She would later claim that, with things falling apart, she believed she could finally tell her employees the truth. The meeting was secretly recorded by an Alameda employee and eventually made its way to federal prosecutors, providing them with a key, utterly incriminating piece of evidence. Ellison had essentially provided a taped confession. SBF, Caroline Ellison, Gary Wang, and Nishat Singh were all eventually charged with fraud. Sam Trabucco, Caroline Ellison's former co-CEO, who had resigned just before everything began to fall apart, avoided any criminal charges and was the only member of Sam's former inner circle who did not participate in the ensuing criminal trial. Adam Yedidia, Sam's friend since MIT, who he had first confided in about his secret relationship with Caroline Ellison, and who had also lived with them in the $30 million penthouse, texted Sam Bankman-Fried during the collapse, "I love you, Sam. I'm not going anywhere. Don't worry." However, within days, he resigned from FTX and eventually agreed to testify against Bankman-Fried, in exchange for immunity. Gary Wang, who had been SBF's friend since high school math camp and his roommate in college, stayed in the Bahamas with SBF long after everyone else in the penthouse had left. But his lawyers eventually convinced him to flee in the middle of the night. A month later, Wang, Caroline Ellison, and Nishat Singh all pleaded guilty and agreed to cooperate with the feds in their investigation against Sam Bankman-Fried in exchange for leniency in their sentencing. Most of Bankman-Fried's closest friends had turned against him. SBF was charged with multiple counts of fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering, and placed under house arrest. SBF was filled with bitterness and regret. He singularly blamed the financial hole that sunk both companies on the trading losses resulting from Caroline Ellison's failure to listen to his hedging advice after their breakup. At one meeting in the midst of the collapse, Bankman-Fried told Ellison, using forceful and strong language, that she was to blame for the financial situation they were in, causing her to break down in tears. While he was under house arrest, he leaked pages of her private diaries to a New York Times reporter. In these writings, Ellison admitted to feeling like an inadequate leader and to cutting off communication with Bankman-Fried after their relationship ended. The leak was deemed witness tampering by the judge, and SBF's bail was revoked. He was ordered to report to prison until his trial. Ellison would stand up for herself somewhat during the trial, admitting that while hedging would have helped, the fundamental problem was Bankman-Fried's decision to touch FTX customer money in the first place. She also argued that they would have had more money available to meet customer withdrawals if SBF hadn't spent so much money on illiquid investments like buying back CZ's shares or investing in so many startups like Anthropic. Even during the trial, Bankman-Fried's bitterness towards Ellison was palpable. He scoffed, laughed, and visibly shook his head during her testimony. The prosecution considered it witness tampering, and the judge ordered him to stop. In post-bankruptcy interviews, SBF also repeatedly claimed that FTX would still be around today, fulfilling customer requests, if not for CZ's tweet. He also repeatedly said that filing for bankruptcy was his biggest regret, and that he had been pressured into it by lawyers, claiming he would have preferred to hold out until more money was recovered to fulfill customer withdrawals, and would have happily accepted any complaints filed against the company in the meantime. 8 minutes after he had docu-signed the bankruptcy documents, he told his lawyers that he had changed his mind, but was informed that that wasn't allowed. A new CEO was named after the bankruptcy filing. John J. Ray III had overseen the Enron bankruptcy, yet he said that the situation at FTX was worse than anything he had ever seen. Never in my career have I seen such a complete failure of corporate controls and such a complete absence of trustworthy financial information as occurred here, Ray said. From compromised systems integrity and faulty regulatory oversight abroad to the concentration of control in the hands of a very small group of inexperienced, unsophisticated, and potentially compromised individuals, this situation is unprecedented. FTX kept no complete list of bank accounts and no complete list of employees. Employees would buy property with company money and put it in their own names. The multi-billion-dollar corporation managed its finances using QuickBooks, a software package for small to medium-sized businesses. What must have been gut-wrenching for Bankman-Fried was that John J. Ray's team kept finding money in places they weren't even looking. Employees would call in asking to repay loans that the company hadn't even kept records of. Random crypto exchanges would call to say that $170 million was sitting in an account somewhere. Within 1 month of the bankruptcy filing, John Ray's team had recovered over $1 billion. Within 2 months, they had recovered over $5 billion. By April, about 6 months after the bankruptcy filing, John J. Ray confirmed that $7.3 billion of the missing $9 billion had been recovered. That figure didn't even include major investments like Anthropic. FTX's $500 million investment in Anthropic would eventually grow to be worth over $3 billion. Media outlets are estimating that FTX customers will get all their money back. However, some were disappointed that they were getting back 100% of the dollar value of what their crypto had been worth, and not the original crypto, which had since increased in value. SBF had shrugged off investors who had encouraged him to hire a grown-up as his chief financial officer. He argued that people over 45 worried too much and were of no real use. SBF hadn't even assembled a real board of directors. His board were just a couple of people who signed documents and whose names he often couldn't remember. He argued that he didn't need a CFO because he could keep track of the money himself. He is quoted in a book by Michael Lewis as saying, "What the F do you think I do all day? You think I don't know how much money we have?" Yet in the final days of FTX, it was clear that he hadn't kept track of the money very well at all. Money that could have helped him stave off declaring bankruptcy to see if withdrawal slowed down. In the final days of the collapse, one employee recalled witnessing Bankman-Fried and Nishat Singh in Sam's living room, with Caroline Ellison joining them on the video screen, frantically searching for money everywhere, seemingly clueless as to where their money was stored. According to the employee, Caroline would announce that she had found $200 million here or $400 million there, as if she had just made an original scientific discovery, and they all seemed completely surprised when the employee delivered a message from a representative of a Bahamas bank saying that they had $300 million stored with them. In court, SBF's lawyers argued that they should be allowed to introduce evidence showing that the investments Bankman-Fried had made with customer funds had been very profitable. His Anthropic investment, for example, was worth up to 6 times its original value. Bankman-Fried was agitated that the prosecution was focusing on things like his $13 million penthouse and the $15 million he spent on private jet flights. Prosecutors argued that these things showed that he had spent customer funds wastefully and recklessly. SBF wanted to show evidence that he had actually used the money for investments that made billions of dollars in profit. However, the judge ruled against it. He compared it to robbing the Federal Reserve Bank, then spending the stolen money on Powerball tickets and happening to win big. It still wouldn't make it right. After a month-long trial, SBF's fate was decided quickly. The jury took just 4 hours of deliberation to find him guilty on all counts of fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering. On March 28, 2024, he was sentenced to 25 years in prison. SBF's arch-nemesis, CZ, didn't escape justice either. Just 3 weeks after SBF was found guilty, CZ chose to plead guilty to charges of money laundering. He faced a personal $50 million fine and agreed to step down as CEO of Binance. Binance itself paid a $4.3 billion settlement with the DOJ and agreed to 5 years of government monitoring. Changpeng Zhao could still be facing a prison sentence of up to 18 months. He is due to be sentenced in April of 2024. By the end of 2023, the CEOs of the 2 biggest crypto firms had both lost their jobs. The feds had gone after Binance like SBF had lobbied for, and CZ had retaliated by taking FTX down. However, SBF is clearly the biggest loser. Meanwhile, legal experts familiar with the case speculate that, thanks to her guilty plea and her cooperation with prosecutors, Caroline Ellison might face no prison time at all. Thanks for watching. If you want to learn more about Caroline Ellison, the other major character in the FTX scandal, you can watch our in-depth profile of her here. You will quickly see why a Taylor Swift and romance-obsessed 20-something-year-old with numerous insecurities should not have been CEO of a billion-dollar company. And if you want to read a book about the FTX scandal, a lot of the information in this video came from the book Going Infinite by Michael Lewis. A link to the book can be found in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please support the channel by liking and subscribing, and thanks for watching.